You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
Baseball podcast returns as we get close to the late days of the month of October. Hi, everybody. I'm Tyler Maughan. Sam Dykstra in New York City. We're so close. You're in the middle of a playoff city right now, Sam. We're recording on Wednesday, 2-2, the ALCS between the Yankees and Astros. What's the atmosphere like in the old Apple there?
I got to say, it is different here. You could feel it a couple years ago when the Mets were obviously making their run to the World Series, but as big a city as New York is, and there's so many different neighborhoods, and I live in Brooklyn, which hasn't had a major league team since the Dodgers left Ebbets Field and all that kind of stuff. You think like, oh, you can escape baseball, but there's always such a palpable buzz when the Yankees are in town or the Mets are in town for a playoff series. It's on the cover of the Daily News, the Post every day, not just the back page of sports, but like the front page, of the main section. It's on the tip of the tongue of everybody in the city, at least, people who live here. So it is really cool, not to rub that in, the face of people who live in 26 other cities that don't have major league playoff teams right now. But,
yeah, whatever, man.
I know. Yeah. A lot of you had your runs, and but it is really neat. And there is something to the fact that the four biggest cities in the country all have playoff teams left. Which I'm sure, Major League Baseball is doing a dance every day for that. But, it is exciting. You get to see the Dodgers trying to make the World Series again for the first time since '88, I think. The Astros, making one of their all-time pushes. The Yankees somehow being a likable team, which, just because their persona over the last decade or so, it's easy to hate them and their money spending, but
it's definitely a very different feeling Yankees team than every other Yankees team that's made the postseason for the last 20 years.
Right. And I say that from from what I'm getting from fans. This is not like me personally, being this a Yankees team. Whoever wins the World Series doesn't really matter to me, but just having this Yankees team that's a homegrown team again, there's so many guys to root for that you've seen come up through the minors and that kind of thing. Everything we've talked about over the last couple of years coming to fruition, whether it's the Yankees, the Cubs, or the Astros, or the Dodgers to some extent. I mean, all these teams left have some claim to that. So that definitely makes these LCS is a little bit more fun, especially from our end, but definitely when you're in the thick of it as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You tweeted something the other day about how you're watching games and your parents ask you, have you interviewed that guy? And more often than not, you can say, yeah, actually, I have interviewed that guy, which is cool about all four of these teams, how they were all built largely from within, which is a conversation that we've had a lot on this podcast that has become the thing to do in baseball. You can't go out. Yeah, you can still go out and supplement a good roster of homegrown talent with some big money, big ticket guys around them, but this is no longer the Major League Baseball of the early to mid 2000s where you can go throw 9-figure deals at a handful of players, build yourself a super team, and all of a sudden you're in the World Series, which makes it so much more fun to watch all these guys get drafted and signed and developed and make their way to the big leagues and have a very bright future ahead for a lot of them still for a ton of years, because we're seeing so many big contributors first, second, third years of their career. The Cody Bellingers of the world, the Corey Seagers, not in the CS, but the Corey Seagers of the world, the American League side, obviously what Aaron Judge has been doing and that team, how many talented guys they've got on that roster. The Astros, that entire club, it's like we watch them win championship after championship in the minor leagues, and now they're doing it at the major league level, and you think, having watched this for the last years, you think like, oh yeah, that figures. And then obviously what the Cubs have done with their homegrown guys as well. So it's been pretty cool for us to get a chance to watch so many of these guys grow and graduate and make it to the big leagues and have all this success. And in the middle of a couple of good league championship series right now, I guess, unless you're a Cubs fan. But you've been fine for the last 3 years, or the last 3 years really, but the last year I guess puts it all into perspective. But third straight LCS for that team, pretty impressive stuff. So with that, a very lengthy welcome, but it's the postseason in Major League Baseball, so everybody's thinking about it. I do get to a point where after the league championship series, I start feeling like soon it's just going to be one game a day soon. And then it's going to be none until
But there's
March.
so much heart we can pour into that one game.
That's true. That is true, and that's fun.
Yeah.
So it's a fun time of year no matter what. We are going to hear from a member of a major league organization that is currently in the postseason and the player himself currently taking part in the Arizona Fall League, and that is Los Angeles Dodgers catching prospect Will Smith, who will join the show coming up in a little bit. But before we get to Will, before we get to Three Strikes, thanks for tuning into the show before the show, wherever you found us. iTunes, Stitcher app, Google Play, or wherever else you get your podcasts. We're also at MILB.com/podcast, and wherever you found us, give us a rating and a review and a subscription if you would be so kind. You can also get in touch. We put out a call last week for email questions. Got some about the minor leagues you want to know about, players you want us to talk about, things about the minors that maybe you are unsure of or don't have exactly the background knowledge that you would like. Get in touch, podcast at MILB.com, or find us on Twitter. Sam is at Sam Dykstra, MILB. I am at Tyler Mon, and we'll do our best to answer those on the show. We got a lot more leeway over the offseason to talk about any and all topics, and with that, we'll get started on Three Strikes for this week's 132nd episode of the show before the show. And we'll kick it off with the AFL, the Arizona Fall League, now a couple of weeks into play. AFL goes Monday through Saturday, off days on Sunday, so we're in week 2 right now, but we already do have a lot of guys who have kind of put their stamp on the early going in the Arizona Fall League in 2017. Sam, who is standing out to you so far?
Yeah, so we should point out the AFL had its first Player of the Week award. That was given to David Bodie of the Chicago Cubs organization. Not a ranked prospect necessarily, but he's somebody who's going to be Rule 5 eligible coming up this offseason. So he's definitely playing for a spot, whether that's a 40-man spot with the Cubs or playing for a spot with another team. He did have some level of success this year at AA Tennessee. He was a mid and postseason All-Star for the Tennessee Smokies. He had a great week last week. He when they gave him the award, he was technically 8 for 16 through his first 4 games. The first week, he's only gotten better since. As of right now, he's 12 of 23 for a 522 average. He's got a 560 OBP. He leads the league with 4 home runs. Nobody else has more than 2 as of this time we're speaking. His 25 total bases are most in the league. The next closest to that is 18, Lourdes Gurriel. Bodie being a guy who needs to win a spot, he is there kind of a man on a mission. He is there with a purpose. He's certainly taking advantage of that. How that's going to play out over a larger sample, we'll have to see. The interesting thing with him is he's kind of a super utility player. He's played mostly second base. He's gotten some third base here in the Fall League. But throughout his minor league career, he has played every single position except for catcher. They've tried him out, all over the infield, all over the outfield. He's mostly going to be an infielder. But for being an 18th round pick out of a community college, he's certainly become an asset for the Cubs. Not a ranked prospect just yet, but with that utility, if he can continue to show an improved bat, and continued added power. I mean, this year he hit 14 homers for Tennessee. That was double his previous high. He's obviously carrying that to the Fall League. That's really fun to see. Over on the pitching side, I've got 2 guys, Albert Abreu of the Yankees pitching for Scottsdale, and Max Fried of the Braves pitching for Peoria. Both have had 2 starts so far this year. Fried has not allowed a run yet, only given up 4 hits and 2 walks over 8 innings. He struck out 11 in that time. Fried, got a major league chance with the Braves at the end of the year this year. They're allowing him to continue to make up for some innings. Obviously, he had Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago. Back when he was a member of the Padres, came over to the Braves, still kind of working his way back. Had pitched 92 2/3 innings this year in the minors, 26 in the majors. So they're just trying to get him added work. He's going to be working for a rotation spot with the Braves, come next spring. Obviously, that's going to be a talented Braves rotation at some point. How is he going to kind of find himself in there? Fall League, he's pitching when guys like Colby Allard, Mike Soroka aren't, so that certainly helps his case. The Braves are kind of between 2 waves right now. You saw Sean Newcomb come up this year. Aaron Blair is up there. What are they going to do with some of their veterans coming up? Is R.A. Dickey going to stay? Is he going to go? What's going to go on there? So Fried has to kind of wedge himself in there. How is he going to force his way into the current system? And then how is he going to keep his spot, when the Allards and the Sorokas and, Luis Gohara is already up, but, how is he going to hold off that second wave that's going to be coming? This is all going to be kind of a test for that for him. And the other guy I had was the number 7, Yankees prospect, Albert Abreu, at least among pitchers. He came over in the Brian McCann trade last year, along with another really hard-throwing right-handed prospect in Jorge Guzman. Didn't see as much of him this year as maybe we would have liked. He only threw 53 1/3 innings across 3 levels, including Class A Charleston, Class A Advanced Tampa, and rookie level Gulf Coast League. So, he's there almost explicitly to make up innings, and he's certainly doing that so far. Right now, he is tied with Fried for the AFL strikeout lead with 11 in 10 innings. So they've allowed him to go a little bit deeper than you traditionally do in the fall league because he has so much time to make up. He's only given up 1 run. It was earned on 6 hits and 3 walks in those 10 innings. So he's allowing not only less than a run, his ERA is 0.90. His WHIP is also 0.90. We'll see how he can kind of carry that deeper. But, knowing how much time he has to make up, we are going to see plenty more of him. Not necessarily in the same way I think we would with Fried. Obviously he's making up innings too, but Abreu has just so much more to do. I think the Yankees are going to be totally fine with him being ridden for a little while longer. He's got some really good stuff, plus fastball, plus to plus, I should say. It can hit triple digits at times. It's not necessarily where he's sitting like some guys, but it can certainly do that. His curveball and changeup have earned positive grades. It's in the control department that he can sometimes get hurt. But like I said, 3 walks in 10 innings so far, not really showing those control concerns that we have seen out of him in the past. So, that's my trio right now. We'll be talking plenty more. This is only 1 week. We're still obviously in small sample territory. But these guys are going against quality competition, and some of these guys have certainly taken off in surprising and exciting ways.
That is strike 1. Strike 2, we'll be talking about this a little bit as the show goes along today, but there was a report from Baseball America this week that the concept of expansion in Major League Baseball seems to be gaining a lot of steam. Kind of an interesting story, and it really blew up, especially on social media. The story was that Portland and Montreal look to be the front runners for when Major League Baseball seemingly inevitably expands to 32 teams. The story didn't have any sourcing. The story just said that there is growing consensus in baseball that this is something that's going to happen, which is probably very likely, but it wasn't a concrete nailed down, this is from this person and this is the timetable and whatever. So there's still some conjecture that's involved here, but that obviously plays a very big role in what the landscape of the minor leagues will look like going forward. So let's say that this is a thing that is going to happen. The Major League Baseball is going to expand to 32 teams. We're not going to discuss on the Major League side what that means, but from a player development standpoint, there's a lot of impact on what this would mean for the minor leagues. Sam, tell us a little bit about kind of your initial reaction and what stands out to you about this on the minor league side.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm going to take a different track than I think we normally do. We want to get excited about more baseball teams. That's great. More major league markets, that's fun and exciting. Hopefully they can succeed. The 2 ones that are being talked about are Portland and Montreal. Obviously Montreal has a complicated history with baseball. We would all love to see it back. Shout out to Jonah Carey, who's probably going to try to do everything he can to make that happen. And, after he got Tim Raines in the Hall of Fame, I wouldn't question anything he can do or his influence.
Unlimited reach.
Right, yeah. But Portland kind of the same way, they had a AAA team that didn't work out. The team ended up moving to El Paso. So how does that kind of work out? What are all the machinations of that? That's where I think everybody else is focusing going to be on the major league side. For me, it's kind of just more exciting because it means more chances for baseball players. Not just the fact that it's going to open up 50 major league spots for guys. So sometime we can have the conversation of, is that going to dilute major league talent? Those are 2 new pitching staffs you need to fill. Those are 10 rotation spots you need to fill. So, guys, the next 10 guys right now in minor league baseball who are looking on the outside in, who aren't necessarily good to be major league types. They, de facto become major league types just because there's more spots. But I think in general, that's good just because you are getting more people chances. We're not just talking about 25-man rosters in the majors. We're talking about rosters at AAA, at AA, at Class A advanced, at Class A full season, short season / rookie level, more complexes. This is just more opportunities for guys to earn their dream. That means more potential really cool stories of, 40th round picks or really late round picks to become special players. Everybody kind of gets bumped up the chain a little bit. People who may have missed out on the draft before now become draft picks. Now, guys who may have been cut in their first year, they may get a slightly longer look. I think that's good in general. I usually lean a little bit towards the player side. This means more jobs for players, which I think is good. We'll talk to Ben about this later in this podcast, but also later in the offseason about, okay, what does this actually mean for the minors? There's a lot of new stadiums that need to be built if this were to come to fruition, or there are a lot of decisions that need to be made about where these affiliates are going to be, not only geographically speaking, but what leagues they're going to be. There's three leagues in AA and AAA, so you can't just put two teams, one in the California League and one in the Carolina League, and call it even. That makes too much of a mix match. So do you put two teams in one league, and that kind of becomes a little bit more of a super league than it was before that? These are all questions we're going to have. It's very early right now, but I think my overall interpretation of the news, or the possibility that this could come, as far down the line as that may be, is that it does mean more jobs for players, more jobs for coaches, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's exciting. That's certainly something, as somebody who covers the sport, we want to see. But yeah, there's still so many questions that remain unanswered. Like you said, that story wasn't exactly incredibly well sourced to the point where I feel like this is going to happen anytime soon. It's more just kind of a buzzworthy topic. But it gets us thinking. It gets us kind of prepared for if this does inevitably happen. Now we're thinking more about what that could mean, and we'll have more answers for that down the line this offseason if it becomes more of a real thing. But at least this starts the wheels turning at the very least.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It was a topic of conversation for us on Twitter the last couple of days, and we did have somebody point out to us, where the AAA or AA affiliates should be for some of these teams was part of the discussion. Somebody said, well, for AAA, Ottawa and Vancouver should definitely be in the mix, especially if one of these teams is Canadian. I think that is an interesting idea. It just made me think back to a story I did, I think that was earlier this year. I think it was before the start of the 2017 season, about the dissolution of the American Association, which was the old third AAA league, and now it's down to just the Pacific Coast League and the International League. And I remember being told by some AAA administrators that the intricacies, the logistics of consistent travel between Canadian cities and American cities for minor league teams got to be a very big hassle, especially post 9/11. So I'd be interested to see what the discussion is, if those are, because those markets are certainly very good markets and have a lot of potential as minor league markets, but would the hassle of that be worth the expansion into those markets? So all those discussions will be really fascinating to watch. And if it happens, when it happens, it's going to be cool. It'll be exciting. It'll be fun. But we are a long way from that. This is a very early story. Obviously, there is not the smoke of a story like this without at least some type of fire. So I'm sure there are discussions going on somewhere, but there was nothing definitive in that story as to what exactly that came from or what a timetable could look like for this. We'll hear from Benjamin Hill on his thoughts on this topic coming up in a little bit, but pump the brakes on it. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to think about. It doesn't look like it's imminent as of right now, but it's certainly an interesting topic of conversation. So that is strike two. Strike three this week, Sam. Org All-Stars are here. We've been rolling through them. We are through the C's now, I believe. What has stood out to you? We name our top players in each minor league system every year by the best systems that prospects turned in for that season. So it's not based on prospect status or whether or not somebody is highly regarded or is at this stage of their career, whatever. It's just the best season for each player at each position in a minor league system. What stood out to you so far about the Org All-Stars to this point?
Yeah. So for anybody who is a fan of the following systems, you can find your teams up there now. That's the D-backs, the Rockies, the Cubs, the Reds, the Braves, the White Sox, the Orioles, and the Red Sox. I wrote up the Red Sox. I won't be touching on them now, but check out that system if you're a Red Sox fan who your team is now out of the playoffs. You're going to be looking towards the future. Are there holes to fill? You can find out some of that in that Red Sox piece. The organization I want to touch on here pretty quickly is the Baltimore Orioles. You heard a couple of weeks ago, we talked to Austin Hayes. He's obviously the breakout prospect of the year in that system. He's up for an Offensive Player of the Year, Milby. Led the minors in total bases. Just became the guy in that system this year. But there are so many other guys who have become, standout prospects in a system that we definitely had towards the bottom of the minors. They were pretty consistently 25 or below entering the year in terms of how we ranked farm systems. Basically because when you looked at it, there wasn't really much incredible talent outside of maybe Chance Sisco, who, Alex Kraft wrote the Org All-Stars up for us. Chance Sisco was a pretty easy pick. He played 97 games this year at AAA Norfolk. I caught up with him, during the Futures game where he caught Brent Honeywell, talked about what it was like to face him. He remains kind of the catcher of the future, even though Wellington Castillo had a really good year for them this year. He's still there, but you've got Austin Hayes, who is now a top 100 prospect. You got Ryan Mountcastle, who's now in the fall league and is knocking on the door of being a top 100 guy. He was a shortstop at Frederick. He moved over to third base in Bowie. He's going to be a third baseman in the fall league. He's a very, very good bat. They need to figure out what to do with him defensively, but he's definitely somebody who they think can be a big part of their future. Still only 20 years old. He hit .314 with an 885 OPS in 88 games at Frederick. Saw those numbers tail off at Bowie. 222 and 605 OPS with 3 homers in 39 games at the higher level. But his bat is good enough to get excited, so he's definitely somebody to pay attention to. But there are some of the names you might not know quite yet that I think you should at least pay attention to at the lower levels when it comes to pitching. Alex Wells had one of the standout years in the minors for me just because his walk rate was so eye-popping. He only walked 10 batters in 140 innings, which is incredible. The fact that you can find a pitcher who is going to pitch 140 innings in the minors is usually a fairly rare case, but he gave himself a shot pitching at Class A Delmarva this year because his control was so special. What's going to happen to that when he goes up the chain? Sometimes guys with special control, you really need to be pinpoint because if your stuff is not at least really, really good, guys are going to find ways to hit it. Kyle Hendricks is a guy who kind of marries those two concepts. His changeup is excellent and his control is really good. Will Wells be that type of pitcher? I don't quite see it just yet, but the season he had definitely puts him on a watch list for 2018. And at a level below that, Brennan Hanafy was the right-handed pitcher in that system, fourth rounder in 2016. Had a back injury that didn't allow him to pitch last year, but he posted a 2.75 ERA over 68 and 2/3 innings. I don't think there's much top-level pitching in that system yet, but when you combine the bats that they have now that are knocking on the door or already in the top 100 and these just really intriguing lower-level arms, this Orioles system, I think, is much improved to where we thought it would be in April. And that's all coming internally. That's not because they traded for anybody. This is not like a White Sox-style rebuild. These are just players they had in the system who have gotten significantly better than they were at the start of the year. And, I think this is a system we have to pay attention more to, give more attention to at the start of next year than we necessarily have in the past.
What I found interesting was I got a chance to write up the Chicago Cubs this year, and we talk so often about the way systems are built nowadays and how you draft and how you develop, and you hope you bring these guys through and they graduate and they're all winning as they come through the minor leagues. They know how to win by the time they get to the big leagues, contend for championships, maybe win a championship, that type of stuff. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of the transitional phase for the Chicago Cubs, and so often you look at a team as all of that stuff grows and blossoms in the minor leagues, and then when it gets to the major leagues and all the success that's had there, and then teams go through rebuilds. The Cubs right now are nowhere near a rebuild in the major league level, but that system from where it was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago is so different now. And that's not to say that it is a down system, but a few years ago, we're talking about in these stories and in our prospect primers, we're talking about Javi Baez and Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber and Wilson Contreras and all of this talent. And it's not that same level of system anymore. There are still definitely some good contributors there. Guys, Victor Caratini obviously had a very, very good season this year behind the plate. Also got some time elsewhere. Jen Ho-Sang was fantastic. The right-handed starting pitcher who started the year with Tennessee, made it up to Iowa, then made it up to Chicago. But it's really interesting just to watch how a system, when it finally pushes all of that elite talent to the major leagues, then there is much less separation in the best in the system from the guys who are probably going to be the also-rans in the system. I just found that interesting. It's not to knock the Cubs system because it was the best system in baseball for so long, but you see when an established core gets to the major leagues, and when that window of contention has opened and is going to be open for a while, the Cubs right now don't need these elite pieces that they've had from the minor league system. And we've seen that case in point with the guys who they've traded away, like Gleyber Torres and Eloy Jimenez, because they've used currency in forms of elite prospects at the minor league level to bring in big pieces that have contributed to championship runs. They got there last year, trying to do the same this year. So that's a fascinating aspect of this to me. Seeing some of these systems that are in stages right now in which we don't often talk about systems in those stages. And that was really interesting to me about this Cubs organization right now. It's not the sexiest take, and it's not the most interesting thing to read about probably, but just the way that that thing was built, it accomplished its goal. It's striving to do the same now in 2017 at the major league level, and things look vastly different at the minor league level. And it's all part of the circle of life in sports, I guess. It was really interesting to research and to write.
Yeah, and the complicated thing about the Cubs now is, will there be a point at which they crater? Obviously, they're a big market. They can spend their way out to compete and contend going forward, and that's probably their plan. But a lot of what makes some of these other teams good is their depth. Right. And I think part of the reason why when we're recording this, you're seeing the Cubs down 3-0 is they don't have the bullpen depth. Yeah. Of obviously the Dodgers or, certainly the Yankees. And that hurts them. And they don't have the internal options to turn to and say, well, we'll turn so-and-so into a reliever and it'll solve itself. Obviously it worked last year, and that's the goal, is to win a World Series, and that's great. And, but the reason why they don't have a Gleyber Torres anymore is because they traded him for that reliever that kind of was supposed to solve the issue in Aroldis Chapman. He's gone now. So is there going to be a point at which, the Cubs kind of bang into a ceiling and they got that one World Series, but these teams with deeper systems, the Astros, the Dodgers certainly are two, who kind of stream past them because they have the pipelines to continually fill these spots. And when injuries happen, as they inevitably do, that's when that depth will kind of be challenged. The Cubs have been pretty good at that in the last 2 years, and in terms of, Ian Happ steps up, becomes a regular contributor, and that helps. And, like all the names you mentioned, Bryant, Schwarber, Russell, Baez, Rizzo, these are all guys coming from the minors, Wilson Contreras, that kind of thing. But at a certain point, they run out of that currency to get a Jose Quintana or an Aroldis Chapman. So what does that mean for the Cubs in 2018 and going forward will be fascinating. And what can they do to rebuild that system? We'll be keeping a close eye on.
And again, Cubs fans are going to be all up in the mentions. The whole point of all of it is to do what you did in 2016. That's the whole point of building a system. It's the whole point of having these guys to trade. It's the whole point of developing these guys through the system. The mission was accomplished. So this is not to knock. If anything, this is more a congratulatory pat on the back that, hey, you did the job. It's just sustaining it. Getting there is one thing. Sustaining it is something entirely different. And it is extraordinarily difficult in any sport, but especially in baseball, to be able to sustain that level of success for several years in a row, which is why it's impressive that the Cubs have been now to 3 straight league championship series. The Dodgers have won 5 straight division titles. But, the Yankees have had down years. The Red Sox have finished in last place several times over the last few years. There are no longer these teams that go out, shell out 9-figure payrolls, win a division year after year after year after year after year, and are always there, always in the discussion, always in the conversation. Maybe the Dodgers are that team in Major League Baseball right now, but the Dodgers haven't been to the World Series since Ronald Reagan was president. The Astros 3 years ago were put on the cover of Sports Illustrated, forecasted to win the 2017 World Series, and that was like a laughing stock at the time. People who didn't see what the Astros were building thought this has to be a joke. This has to be something to sell magazines and get clicks. But to get there again is one thing. Being able to sustain that over a consistent several years of a run is really, really tough. So it was just an interesting
the minors,
thing.
Though.
Right.
The whole point of this is what's next.
Right.
That's where we have to keep our focus, is what's coming after this, and what's in the pipeline, what's coming up through the system. As much as it sounds like we are not necessarily knocking the Cubs system, but calling it what it is, we know that the goal has already been achieved. But 2016 was 2016. We're now in 2017, almost closing the book on that. So we have to keep looking forward and kind of pushing, keep asking the questions and keep looking and trying to predict what's coming after that.
One last important note about the Cubs. Jake Siner's doppelganger, Ryan Williams, spent this year at AAA Iowa as well. So maybe we will see him in the big leagues in 2018. Rest in peace, Jake, the original co-host of the show before the show. Been a long time since we've had an RIP Jake joke on the show. So I'm glad we were able to bust that out again. 3 strikes, wrapping up for the 6th edition of the show. Coming up, we're going to head to the Dodgers organization and catch up with catcher Will Smith, who will dive into his injury-shortened 2017, but the start to his campaign in the Arizona Fall League, what it was like to play at the University of Louisville, and a whole lot more. That's coming up on episode number 132 of the show before the show from MILB.com next. Well, Sam wanted to get us, and very alertly, wanted to get us a prospect who was a member of a Major League postseason organization and also a player who has taken part in the Arizona Fall League. And the guy who goes 2 for 2 in those categories for us this week is the 8th-ranked prospect in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization, catcher Will Smith. Will, welcome to the show. How's things in Arizona?
Going well, thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. You guys get a chance as Dodgers guys to do this at home in the AFL, and we talk about that sometimes with guys who have the experience already at a facility where you get to play in the Fall League, and it's kind of an added bonus for you guys because you sort of get to be the ambassadors. Your home ballpark, you and the White Sox guys can show the other dudes around, members of the Desert Dogs, but there's a lot of familiarity there too, and being somebody who's just in your first full year in pro ball, is it nice getting to be at a place that you're already, somewhat comfortable in? You're playing high-level competition. You're playing with guys you haven't played with before, against a lot of guys you haven't seen before. What's it been like getting a chance to do that in the AFL and do it in Glendale?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It's definitely nice being at our own ballpark, and just the surroundings here, they're familiar, so that makes it just a little bit easier to kind of get to know guys because you're the guy at home. But it's fun to get to know these guys and make good friendships with a bunch of future MLB guys.
Well, let's talk about the AFL campaign. Will got things started this year with Class A Advanced Rancho Cucamonga, played 72 games there for the Quakes, then got a bump up to AA Tulsa. We'll talk about why it was a shortened stay in Tulsa here in a little bit. But you get back in after some time away from the field due to an injury, and now taking part in the AFL, a hot start. It's different for catchers because if you are a left fielder, you go to the AFL, you kind of know what you're working on, know what you're trying to do. For catchers, you guys get down there, you've got to learn an entirely new pitching staff for the most part, guys you've never known or caught or worked with before, but you've gotten off to a really good start. What's contributed to that, and how has the process of getting acclimated to catching new guys gone for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a process, and it's several conversations with each and every pitcher. But yeah, I mean, you go through it during spring training where you're meeting new guys at different levels. You have to catch them. So it's just trying to get to know what pitches they throw, what they do well and don't do well. And yeah, it's just kind of talking to them, getting to know them, and just kind of getting a feel for them.
And, as Tyler alluded to, we should get into why you're here. You get that bump to AA Tulsa first game. you get hit in the hand. It's a broken right hand. You don't play for Tulsa the rest of the year. So right now on your resume, there's that 1 AA game. Just take us through what the recovery was from that injury. When you had the discussion with the Dodgers that you were going to be headed to the fall league, and what kind of approach you have to being there.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a major setback this year, getting injured, and it was even more disappointing that was the first game up there. But yeah, it was several conversations throughout the whole rehab process, like, hey, is there any way I can get some extra at bats somewhere? And the fall league was definitely a discussion, and fortunately enough for me, they gave me that opportunity to come here and get those extra at bats that I missed throughout the season. So I mean, it just came down to the front office wanted to give me a chance, and I'm pretty grateful for it.
So is that a conversation you had started? When were you starting to feel like you could have come back? Was it at the end of or early September, or how did that rehab process kind of work? Coming back from a hand injury.
Yeah, I mean, the timetable was 4 to 6 weeks, which put me right at the end of the season. So talking with the trainers and a doctor too, they're like, let's just probably take it slow, probably done for the rest of the season unless somehow miraculously I heal quickly. But yeah, it was pretty much shut down the rest of the regular season, and then I'll definitely come back for Instructs and then possibly the fall league.
And so what was it like coming back from that injury, being a catcher? Because obviously you're working with your hands a lot anyway, trying to work that position, but also you're trying to hit. And like Tyler, alluded to as well, it's been a good comeback for you so far. I think you're 5 for 14 so far in your first 4 games with Glendale. How was the rehab process trying to regain the strength in the hand and getting to a place where you were comfortable, not only to hit, but to catch again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it first of all came down to just I put in the time in the weight room with my strength conditioning when I couldn't do anything with my hand, and I think the trainer said that would really help speed up the process when I could start strengthening my wrist back up and getting mobility in it. And then when I was able to start hitting, just took it slow, took it off the tee, eventually the flips, then the on-field BP. So yeah, I was just kind of getting those reps back in, just taking it one day at a time, and then also trying to get my arm back in shape since it was my right wrist. My arm got pretty weak, so I was doing a nice throwing program, shoulder program to help get back on the field quickly.
Well, let's talk about the start to the season. You go out of camp with Rancho, 72 games in the California League, but you got kind of an advanced scout look at the Cal League by finishing 2016 there, 25 games with the Quakes at the end of your debut season. How do you think that helped prepare you for 2017? Just kind of knowing what to expect at that level. Obviously, a big jump from what you saw in rookie ball to get the year started with Ogden. Then you're up with Great Lakes for a little while. Then you do get that little time in with Rancho. How did that prepare you for 2017 in the Cal League?
Yeah, I mean, it was just I knew what the fields were like. I had a previous relationship with the coaches from the year before, and yeah, it just made it a little bit easier going back and knowing where I was going to be. And yeah, just kind of having a feel for that league and how the ball plays in there. And yeah, it just made it a little bit more comfortable, which was nice for this year.
When you are at that level, and then you get a chance to finally get that call to AA, it seems like that's when it starts to settle in that you're at the stages of your minor league career where you're really going against the cream of the crop type of guys. And to have conquered the high A level and then get that chance, albeit briefly, in AA, how did you feel about, you're only 1 year out of school, but already having an impressive start to your pro career? What was your confidence level like when you got that call to Tulsa, kind of knowing where you were in the grand scope of your baseball career headed toward the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy to get that call and very honored. But, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a big step. Just knowing, like, hey, I'm just now a couple calls away from getting up to where I want to be. But yeah, I mean, every guy down here dreams of moving up every day. So, yeah, it was nice. It was fun. It was a fun trip up there for a few short days.
So far in your pro career, who are the guys that you've enjoyed catching the most over your first couple of seasons in the system?
Oh man, I've got a lot of them. I mean, the big leaguers are always fun. Got to catch some of them during spring training. But then on the minor league side, I mean, we had a guy in Rancho for a while, Walker Bueller, who made his debut this year, and he's fun to catch. He's really good. We have another guy in Mitch White with the Dodgers. I mean, there's tons of guys with our organization that are fun. And then now being here with the AZL, I mean, get to see guys in different organizations. You kind of learn how they do stuff. So it's cool here.
And kind of flipping over to offense, this year when you were at Rancho, you hit 11 homers in 72 games. Obviously, California League is a pretty homer-friendly league, but that's a pretty significant jump for you. You only hit 2 homers, I think, in 2015 back at Louisville. Kind of talk about the progression of your power game and how you were able to kind of tap into that a little bit more this year than maybe in previous seasons.
Yeah, I mean, my freshman and sophomore years in college, there wasn't much production on the power side. Junior year, there was a lot more. And then basically this off season, putting in work with the hitting coaches, with the Dodgers, just kind of learning how to do it and how to do it correctly. And then just being able to translate it into the games is what I was kind of learning this year. And I thought I did a decent job, but I mean, there's definitely still stuff to work on. And I think it just keep getting better for me.
And kind of on the other side of the ball, going back to defensive work, you're really known for having a really strong arm. I think you threw out 30 of 63 attempted base stealers this year. But the Dodgers also tried you out at second base, at third base. They have a guy in the majors right now in Austin Barnes who had done that in the system and has done that a little bit at the major league level. What was that conversation like to get you to play a little bit of infield just for a couple of games here and there? And what was that transition like for you?
I mean, it wasn't too bad for me. I had definitely an infield background from high school. That's what I played in high school, was the infield. Didn't really catch much, but like in college, I would always take ground balls during batting practice and stuff, just to kind of work on my hands and my footwork, which I like to do because that translates over to catching for me and kind of keeps me more athletic. But yeah, it was fun to get back out in the infield this year and get some games in second and third.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your college days. We love talking to guys from the big time programs, and Louisville, hires a head man for that program in Dan McDonnell, who goes in 2006 from taking the job of a team that was just over 500 to 2007, taking him to Omaha, going to the College World Series. And this is kind of an interesting fact that I didn't know, but Louisville did not produce a single first round pick until Kyle Funkhauser in 2015, and then you go his catcher in the first round in 2016. So tell us about what that program has been like. I mean, it's a decade now of really sustained success, but what makes Louisville special and what makes the development of you guys and the elite talent around you special?
Yeah, I mean, the whole baseball program starts with Dan McDonnell, who's done an excellent job there since he came. And yeah, I mean, I actually grew up in Louisville, so I got to see the whole program grow and where it was at to where it is now. But yeah, I mean, it came down to him surrounding himself with the right people of that program. I mean, the coaches are great, the trainer, the weight coach is great, and just came down to when I was there, just a lot of hard work. And I'm sure that's what they were doing the years before, is just putting in the work to get better, and then just starting to pay off the last couple of years now.
And how much are you following, your fellow Cardinals in the minors? Corey Ray was a 5th overall pick. Brendan McKay was 4th overall this year, was rumored to be in the conversation for 1-1. Obviously coming off a strong year. Zach Birdie, in the White Sox system. How much are you following those guys? How much are you guys keeping track of each other and keeping in contact?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a group chat going with everyone I played with. So guys are constantly putting stuff in there, just normal stuff that we'd talk about when we were back in college. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to see your teammates you played 3 years in college with have such great success in pro ball and really making moves towards getting to the big leagues, which is where pretty much everyone that went there wants to end up. So it's cool. It's fun to see your friends and your buddies for life just keep succeeding on the field.
And you guys talk about how, pro success could even more buoy, the college program. If recruits are seeing, guys like you, McKay, Ray, all that kind of stuff, succeed at the major league level, and then seeing on your bio that you went to the University of Louisville. Do you guys talk about carrying that kind of pride for the program into the minors, or is it just kind of a brotherhood that's just stuck together?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more of the brotherhood that's stuck together, but it's also learning that work ethic down in college that was instilled in us that we carry over to pro ball, where it's coming out and winning each day and getting better every day, which in turns is probably going to end up with some good careers for a lot of guys that come out of that program.
Will, for a personal note for you, you are very luckily, I would say, a guy born March 28th, 1995. I feel like you missed a lot of the Will Smith jokes that you would have had to deal with had you been born like 5 to 10 years earlier. But how annoying does it get having to deal with Will Smith jokes? And on a minor league flare, when you go on the road places, do road teams play Will Smith music for you when you come to the plate?
Oh, yeah, just about every ballpark does. Yep.
What's
yeah,
like? Is it always the same song? Do you always get like Big Willie style, or is it mixed up?
There's probably a good 5 songs or so that's played every time.
So now being at this level and knowing that you're probably not going to have to deal with that for too long, what is the biggest thing that you're working on as you get to, you get the double A exposure, probably going to spend some time in Tulsa next year, but the AFL provides you such an opportunity to work on stuff, obviously with some of the lost innings toward the end of this season, but just to get additional work in before 2018, what's the biggest thing on your list that you want to try to accomplish or you want to work on through the next few weeks in the AFL?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just getting the at-bats I missed in. But I really want to keep improving my bat. I feel like my catching's been doing really well, and there's always stuff to improve catching-wise. But, yeah, I mean, the biggest focus for me is just improving my bat and showing what I can do on the offensive side.
And obviously you are playing right now while the Dodgers, as we're talking, up 3-0 in the LCS. Mm-hmm. How much of a trickle-down effect does that have to you guys, even during the regular season, as much success as the Major League club was having, and then into the postseason with, the Dodgers contingent in the fall league? How much does that trickle down to you guys and give you confidence that you're playing in such a successful organization?
Oh, I mean, it definitely shows that the whole organization in LA is moving in the right direction. And it shows, and then you can see all the guys that have come out of the farm system, like Bellinger, Seager, Farmer, that are having such success at the big league level. And it just kind of puts that in the back of your mind, like, hey, trust the process that's going on here. We're all going to get our shot at some point. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty fun to watch because you get to meet those guys at spring training and to see the success they're having, and the postseason's awesome. So it's fun.
He is Will Smith, the 8th-ranked prospect in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization, the Louisville native, the University of Louisville product, and very impressively, as I told Will before we started recording today, he went out with the broken hand on July 10th, but for whatever reason, there's a clerical error on one of our stat servers that shows that Will actually went 1-for-1 with a pinch hit single against Springfield on July 31st. So a phantom single that never occurred actually gives Will a 500 AA batting average and a 1250 OPS. So pretty impressive work for a broken hand and not actually having had that at bat. Well, thanks a ton for giving us the time, man, though, and good luck in the AFL. Best of luck getting ready for 2018. We'll be watching in Tulsa and OKC and beyond, man. Enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Benjamin Hill joins us every week to discuss the business of minor league baseball. And this week we have a topic that's sort of impacts Major League Baseball and how it could affect the minor leagues. We'll get into it here in a sec. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hi, Tyler. I'm well, and I'm sitting next to Sam, who I presume is also well. Also well.
Okay, that's 2 wells. We're 2 for 2 on the wells. There was a story this week, Ben, from Baseball America, that the concept of expanding Major League Baseball is growing in momentum. We'll discuss this a little bit more in depth, and we'll revisit this as the story develops some legs. But let's just get your quick reaction to this. If there was a period of expansion. This is the longest that Major League Baseball has gone without expansion in a couple of generations. There is an idea that maybe Portland and Montreal would be two cities that are at the forefront of an expansion movement in Major League Baseball to go to 32 teams. Strictly from a minor league standpoint, what would this mean? It obviously means 12 additional affiliations, but have you given an idea to what this could look like, Ben, if this did happen, where these teams would be added, how they would fit into these leagues? How would this impact franchise alignment in the minors?
I mean, I've given it some thought, I guess as a lot of baseball fans have. I do not have any, inside information at the time. This will certainly be a topic, as you said, to revisit further into the offseason. But there's people think of this first and foremost as just a major league issue. Oh my goodness, Major League Baseball is going to have 32 teams instead of 30. But like you said, that means there's going to be 2 new AAA teams, 2 new AA teams, 2 new Class A advanced teams, and 2 Class A teams, let alone some combination of new short season and rookie level teams. And the first thought there is, well, right now there are 160 PDCs, player development contracts, guaranteed between major and minor league baseball. That is part of the professional baseball agreement, the governing contract between major and minor league baseball that currently calls for 160 affiliation agreements. That will expire at the end of 2020. And obviously, if expansion is an issue, it will also be an issue, how many affiliations minor league baseball gets guaranteed based on how many major league teams there are. So it'll be interesting to see, because where are these teams necessarily going to go? I mean, obviously you need AAA teams, you need AA teams, but where? So we were talking about this on Twitter just a little bit yesterday, and someone said, okay, if it's Portland and Montreal, then Portland's AAA is Vancouver and Montreal's is Ottawa. And that sounds reasonable, but then you think, does Vancouver have a AAA-ready stadium? Nat Bailey Stadium, where Vancouver used to be, or where Nat Bailey Stadium, which is now the home of the Northwest League Vancouver Canadians, that used to be a AAA stadium, but I think in the year 2017, it probably doesn't meet the specs. And, it's a very old ballpark. So would Vancouver have any shot of, housing a AAA team? And so there's just going to be question upon question, no matter what scenario you get into. And you also have to think that whenever year that Major League Baseball adds these 2 teams, if and when, the minor league, they're going to start the farm teams playing prior to that season. Like right. The short season teams in 98 when there was expansion, the short season teams for those 2 new franchises, Tampa Bay and Arizona, they started playing in 96 short season and then had full season teams in 97 prior to the major league teams, appearing in 1998. So minor league baseball will need a lot of leeway, a lot of room before this all starts to, get all their ducks in a row. It's going to have to be in close cooperation with Major League Baseball, obviously. And, we've seen the pace of stadium construction slow down greatly in recent years. It's, really hard to obtain funding and always a debate, and rightfully so. And so to think that we're in an era now where there's maybe 1 new stadium a year, and all of a sudden we need 8 new teams, it's a very interesting thing. So I need to look into this. All I'm saying is there's a lot of questions.
I mean, I think it is going to be a lot more complicated web. And like you said, the reaction was, what would a team in Portland look like? What would a team in Montreal look like? But there's obviously so many other ramifications that follows. Again, we'll get more into this, but it would be, does Bakersfield enter the conversation again because they have a stadium, or how would that kind of work out at some of the lower levels?
And I really think that's not the answer. I mean, no. Minor league baseball right now is trying to, all the facilities that have waivers to, allow them to be minor league stadiums while not meeting, the technical specifications for being professional affiliated stadiums. I think the last thing both parties want to do is make a whole bunch of exceptions for subpar facilities.
Right.
A lot of moving parts.
Answer after that and all that. So yeah, we'll be able to get more into that, I think, as the season kind of goes along. One thing we should touch on quickly, because we didn't get a chance to last week, voting is coming to a close for the Milbies, but this is your kind of chance to explain. You're the one who gets to pick the promo of the year candidates. So take us through, which ones made the cut here, and what some of your favorite promos of the year were, at least, as voted on by fans in the last couple weeks.
Right. Milby Award voting is going on now. We'll end Friday. We're speaking here on Wednesday, and I assume this podcast will appear tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
yeah,
yes.
on Thursday. So your time to vote is running out. Every year, I've been doing this for years, choosing the 10 nominees for the Promo of the Year Milby Award. And in a sense, are these my 10 favorite promos? Certainly some of them are my favorite promos, but it's not just about what's my favorite, but it's about representing different aspects, different trends, and trying to have, and always trying to recognize originality and things that haven't been done before. So this year I picked the Akron Rubber Ducks, a League of Their Own night. Several teams did League of Their Own nights. I went with Akron because they were the ones who first brought Marla Hooch to the ballpark, and they gave out her own bobbleheads, and it seemed like there was a lot of secondary elements to that promotion that really made it work. I felt like food had to be represented in some kind because that's such a trend, and I went with Albuquerque, the green chili cheeseburgers. Real successful night for them. First time Albuquerque ever adopted a food-themed identity. And also, I think what put it over the top for me is that they played the Fresno tacos. Usually teams only adopt their, temporary food identities at home, but Fresno went on the road and played as the tacos against the green chili cheeseburgers. In Charleston, the world's largest silly string fight. I know some guys in the front office there well.
Including Bill Murray now.
Including Bill Murray. I'm the only guy Bill Murray knows. Check it out. Check my pin tweet. But the silly string fight was kind of a disaster in the sense that it took all night to clean it up. It made a mess of the ballpark. But if you're really willing to go the extra mile for fans and create such a spectacle, such a visual, such a mess, you got to give the River Dogs so much credit for just giving away thousands of cans of silly string, or 4,025 cans of silly string, and having fans shoot it off during the 7th inning stretch. I mean, that's something. It's minor league baseball, and what's one of the biggest cliches? We're in the memory making business. So that is a memory that they made.
That
Corpus
also
Christi,
must have been a very strange 8th and 9th inning. Just if you were on the field, it's just
Yeah,
people cleaning themselves off.
There's a great photo from that night taken across the field from the third base side towards the first base side, and you just see these streams of color all over the air, and the pitcher just like warming up in the midst of it, like nothing was happening. And that's like minor league baseball in a nutshell. Absolutely. Corpus Christi, I went with the Dia de los Hooks night. Obviously a lot of a huge Mexican population in Corpus Christi. Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. Dia de los Muertos. The Day of the Dead is a huge holiday observed there in Corpus Christi. So they incorporated it into a long weekend at the ballpark with truly one of the coolest logos, incorporating those traditional Mexican elements. So the Hooks became, Dia de los Hooks, and celebrated their own Day of the Dead. Bob Ross night, which has gotten probably more attention than any promotion this year, the Daytona Tortugas. Bob Ross was a native of Daytona. This promo already won the Golden Bobblehead Award, which is voted on by people within the industry at the promo seminar. They gave away the Bob Ross bobblehead, had a happy little 5K run, had art instructors at the ballpark, had the Bob Ross themed food specials. They really blew it out. Daytona has done a great job this year, or they did a great job. Really going the extra mile with their promos, and Bob Ross night really stood out. Had to go with Erie for alternative facts night. We've talked about this before. You're walking a real thin line, very much a tightrope when you're a minor league baseball team and you step into the world of politics. But they were able to play both sides pretty well, get some pretty good digs in, and they had one of the most coveted and absurd giveaways of the year when, as part of Alternative Facts Night, they gave away championship rings for a championship they did not win, when they allegedly went 140-0 in 2016. So that's a super creative promotion. Louisville, Muhammad Ali Appreciation Night. He's a Louisville native. And the Bats kicked off a full-on Muhammad Ali tribute weekend on the anniversary of his death with a night in Ali's honor at the ballpark with theme jerseys and a lot of special guests. So when Muhammad Ali is from your hometown, you got to honor an American icon like that. Someone who stood up to the powers that be, was really controversial, suffered for his beliefs, and then was loved and beloved 40 years later for the rest of his life. Ode to Tommy John surgery statue, Potomac Nationals. They literally gave away a statue showing the exposed ulnar collateral ligament in the statue as a tribute to baseball's most infamous surgery. So certainly one of the most creative giveaways there. And finally, Salem, or not finally, penultimately, the Salem Kaiser Eclipse Fest. A lot of teams in the path of totality did promotions on the day of the eclipse. I was in Columbia, who did a great job. I chose Salem Kaiser, though, because they were the first to announce and really set the template for these eclipse-themed promos. The eclipse hit on the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest just a little after 9 in the morning, so they played an AM game and wore special jerseys, and again set the template for what was truly the most memorable thing you could ever do at a minor league ballpark, which is stop the game on account of darkness and then restart it a couple minutes later when it's not dark anymore. And finally, Spokane Indians Red Band Rally. The Red Band Trout lives in the Spokane River, and the team has partnered with the local Indian tribe and conservation organizations to raise awareness and funds to clean up the river and help the trout. Had an alternate red band trout identity on the baseball caps, and so like a lot of real good locally oriented philanthropic effort with a really cool logo. And Spokane has always done that sort of stuff really well. So there's the run through, guys. I hope I didn't bore anyone too much. Listeners, I hope I didn't bore you too much. If I bored you, tweet at me at Ben's Biz and tell me why you were bored.
Hashtag.
And go vote also, which you
And
still
go
have time
vote.
to do.
Yeah.
You can still do that. There's a piece up on the blog that we also have to get to. Weird Al Yankovic, which is a very Ben Hill topic in minor league baseball, the most Ben Hill topic, joined together at last. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it last. I've found excuses to write about Weird Al throughout my career. But, last week I finally put up my last, in-season blog post, the last little bit I had from my actual road trips. And then transitioning to the off-season is very difficult for me because after all that, after planning all the trips and going on them and writing about them and getting all the material out, there's always this feeling of like, now it's the off-season. What do I do? So, I kind of indulged myself, and Weird Al, my all-time hero, announced the tour I've been waiting for decades, in which he's not doing one of his elaborately produced parody-centric shows, which are great, but they're always the same because they are, hyper-planned multimedia extravaganzas. He's going on the road starting in March on a tour where he's playing originals in a stripped-down setting with his band. And so I looked at the tour, found numerous examples of when he's going to be visiting minor league towns during the minor league season, and highlighted all those different cities and picked an original song to pair with each specific minor league show. And I have rationale for all those picks, but they're all very obscure. But go to the blog.
You could.
Yeah.
This is a Ben's Biz exclusive in every sense of the word.
Yeah. I think you said it was peak Ben's Biz.
It was peak Ben's Biz.
Someone else said it was John Parker in our office said it was the most pure Ben's Biz post. This is me. I'm just a 30-something-year-old man who writes about Weird Al and tries to tie it into my actual job in minor league baseball, and who was actually single, believe it or not. So, hey, tell your friends.
So, in a way, is this your preview for your trip next year?
People have gotten on Twitter and email. People have been like, "Hey, I'm going to this show. Are you going to be in town?" It was actually an email from a reader, Kyle. What's up? In Wisconsin, saying, "Hey, come to the Timber Rattlers game," and then the tour ends in Green Bay on June 10th, and so people are like, "Wow, you got to go to visit minor league baseball and go to these Weird Al shows." I'm not sure if I'll have the budget and the kind of, I don't know how far I can stretch that premise when it comes to reality. He's playing in New York City, where I live, in March before the season starts, so I'll definitely be at that show. I'm sure I'll do my best to get to a few others throughout. And as I mentioned in the blog post, Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota is my favorite song of all time, not just by Weird Al, but by anyone. It's an original song. But it's all about, exploring America and focusing on the endearing and the weird and the out of the way places and the nooks and the crannies. And, I loved that song so much when I was a kid. And then I've sort of, ended up with the job I have now. And, it actually makes me a little not sad. It makes me happy. Misty-eyed to think like that kid grew up to be Ben's Biz, because that's really what I love the most. Weird America, and I think who celebrates that better than Weird Al? And what industry in this country celebrates it more consistently than minor league baseball? And that I get to be a part of it, still being a huge Weird Al fan and writing about the minor leagues, is very satisfying to me.
There is also coming up a wrap-up of the best food of 2017. Is that right?
That is right. food-based identities that'll be up on the site tomorrow, Thursday, the day this podcast drops. So just a overview from your green chili cheeseburgers to your Reading whoopie pies to your Fresno Oreo tacos if you want to start getting avant-garde, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A wrap-up of all the food-themed identities that took place in the minor leagues this year. Maybe not all of them. I'll probably have forgotten one or two, and people can get in touch and act like the whole premise is flawed and I shouldn't have wrote the story in the first place. But I'm writing it, and I'm being as thorough as I can. Check it out on MILB.com, the official site of minor league baseball.
Well,
You
sticking
can
to
do
my
that.
brand, Brooklyn Slices is on there at least, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn Slices is on there.
Okay, because they sold out of Brooklyn Slices shirts before I could get one, and I'm very upset.
I'm really sorry to hear that,
Yeah.
Sam.
We
Don't
could
have
all
it.
go get an actual Brooklyn slice on Friday in Brooklyn when we're all hanging out together. How does that make you feel?
Hey, it's got to be gluten-free for this disease. I've got a
That's true.
disease.
That is true.
I have a disease.
It's true. I'm sorry, Ben. Benjamin Vanilla, you can find on Twitter. He's at Ben's Biz. You can check out the blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com. The food identity story coming up on the site. Actually, if you're listening to this podcast, it means it's up there already, so go check that out. Check out the blog and everything else. Minor League Baseball business related. And, undoubtedly, we'll be talking to Ben a lot more about maybe this expansion stuff. This just has the feeling for some reason of a minor league offseason that's going to surprise us with some affiliations and some things that are coming up. So it should be a fun one. Should be an interesting one for us to have some topics to discuss. So Ben will continue to do it all offseason. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, well, plenty to talk about. In the meantime, check me out on okcupid.com.
Thanks, Ben. Finishing off the 132nd episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We don't have a whole lot to discuss. We can't really give you playoff predictions anymore because by the time you hear this, you could already have one team on to the World Series. The Dodgers win tonight because we are recording this on Wednesday. So we're not going to do that. We don't have no TV.
You're saying you don't want to give the hot take that the Cubs are going to come back and win?
I
seven?
saw that David Ortiz today said that baseball would just be dead if the Cubs came back. Like it would just be everybody's brains would explode, and that would be it for baseball if the Cubs came back from down 3-0. Could you imagine the takes? Those would be the hottest takes. The only takes that could possibly be hotter would be the Yankees doing it to the Red Sox. The Red Sox. Well, I guess now would be the Yankees doing it to the Red Sox since the Red Sox already did that once. But man, the
Right.
Cubs and the Dodgers, those are the two teams in the National League that would spawn the spiciest takes. So it might actually be kind of fun.
Right, and just the vitriol that would come at the Dodgers after it would be a mirroring of their season. But I don't want to get too far down on that road. It could literally be over. By
It
the time
could
you're
be.
hearing
In
this.
several hours, it could be over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't have that. We don't have any MILB TV games. As we noted to you last week, when the Major League Baseball season wraps up, we will have some AFL games at MLB.com and on MLB Network. But we'll talk about those as the fall rolls along. And otherwise, I guess we're done. Next week, though, very exciting, an in-person edition of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com.
Which always feels like our best episodes.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's true. That is definitely true. We've got some team bonding going on Friday. We're going to go see a fantastic stand-up comedian, the three of us. Adam Caton Holland, who I've always felt like looks like Ben Hill, and Ben Hill will be there with us, so it'll just be a whole weird thing. It's going to be good. Should be good.
I wish I got a reaction of when you told Ben that the comedian we're seeing
Reminds me of him.
you of Ben. So now he's just going to be sitting there saying, like, do I sound like that?
It's a big
Do I
compliment.
look like that?
It's a big compliment. He's hysterical. He's my favorite comedian, man. So take it, Ben. Take it as a happy thing. Something. All right, that'll do it for this week's edition. We will talk to you with a World Series on tap coming up next week. It should be a whole bunch of fun. He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Maughan. We'll talk to you then.